My parents flew to Poland for a week. I stayed because of the session. In fact, I wanted to stay. I'm 20 and don't really want to travel with my parents. Living, in general too. So I rejoiced at the weeks of solitude. Several days of school flew by quickly, and the weekend arrived, the middle of my vacation. I didn't count on my friends, they also had school. And on Saturday morning I installed a couple of old strategy games on the computer to relieve the boredom of the weekend. Apple juice and chocolate were purchased. I took out half a bottle of whiskey I had saved from May and sat down at the computer. By the way, I smoke. Not often, but I like to smoke longer. Therefore, once an evening I go out onto the landing with a cigarillo and stand for about 20 minutes. Or sit in a chair next to the transition to the stairs. That's what I did that evening. I already had 200 minus 250 grams in me, but since all this had accumulated over the whole day, even the most greedy traffic cop could not call me drunk. We have 5 apartments in the corridor, then an iron door. Behind the iron door is a hall with elevators, regular and freight, and glass doors to the landing, on which, in fact, there is a chair and an ashtray. I closed the door to the apartment, walked through the corridor, opened the door to the hall, simply closed it behind me and went out onto the landing. It was about 11, but what is this for a June night? Below on the benches, barely distinguishable couples talked about their own things. I sat down in a chair and lit a cigarette. Playing with the smoke, I relaxed. Sitting in a chair, your face is facing the flight of stairs. And just when I was finishing my cigarette downstairs 2 or 3 flights, someone choked loudly. He coughed wetly as if he was coughing. I won't say that homeless people constantly spend the night in our building, but this has happened several times already. When I got up, my chair creaked and apparently, the homeless man heard it because he began to go upstairs. I realized that he or she would start begging for something, especially so late. And quickly throwing the bowl into the ashtray, I walked through the elevators and entered our common neighbor's corridor. When I closed the door, I saw a figure through the glass doors to the landing, but I didn't understand who exactly it was. The door was made of glass, the figure was blurred, and I couldn't see whether it was a woman or a man. Walking along the corridor to my door, already into the apartment, I noticed that the steps continued, and he or she was moving on. But the door was already closed, and I, without worrying, walked into the apartment. Suddenly something seemed to cling to the door to the landing. I stopped and began to listen. You know, when you stop and hardly breathe, I just froze. The homeless man felt the door. I heard the sound of palms sliding over the iron, precisely sliding, stroking it. It was quiet, even deaf in our corridor. The acoustics were excellent. I was surprised, and he moved on. Taking the keys out of my shorts pocket, I began to poke the key into the lock when I realized that someone was hissing. Laugh or not, but the first association is the moment from Harry Potter when he spoke snake. Shh, shh, shh. The homeless man hissed outside the door. I froze again, already wary, not scary, just very stupid and weird. Behind the iron door, 1.5 meters away from me, a homeless man was hissing, leaning against the door. I listened. The hissing died down. I slowly continued to open the lock, but the keys were jingling. As soon as I inserted them into the door, something hit me. Exactly delicious. Have you ever dropped a piece of fresh meat on a cutting board, or just accidentally on the floor? Did you throw a wet rag while starting to wash the floor? The sound was exactly the same. I pulled away and froze. The keys were hanging in the lock. It takes 4 turns, but I didn't even make the first one. I was waiting. There was hissing behind the door. I was already sure that this was not a homeless person. Anything but a homeless person. Something again smacked against the door. Not much. Not to knock him out, just to be heard. And I heard. The silence was deaf. There was pressure on my ears. I kept waiting for one of the neighbors to come out and dispel this stupid moment. But what do I have? A young family with a 2-year-old girl who must sleep like her parents. 2 old farts, also probably already asleep. An incomprehensible woman, middle-aged, who is on her own, and in general I haven't seen her for about a week. The apartment, which has been closed and has been for sale for 4 years, is also our family's apartment. Something squished, loud, nearby, behind the door, maybe even right in front of her. I closed my eyes and felt fear. The sounds began to overlap each other. A rhythm appeared. Savory sound, squelching, hissing. Savory sound, squelching, hissing. I listened. There was something inhuman about him. I was afraid. Before that, I was simply afraid, but now fear filled me completely. I didn't move. The keys were hanging in the lock. It took me a minute to muster up the courage to quickly turn the keys and go into my room. My 2 doors, 6 locks, TV, and unfinished whiskey. It's just a great joke. Great joke. And I'm a pathetic coward. No weird stuff. Yes, I don't know what it is, but it could be a prank. It won't make it in time, even if it's some kind of it. I was ready. I was counting. Delicious sound. Once, squish. 2, hiss. 3, delicious sound. Once, squish. 2, hiss. 3, I'll start opening at 3. Let's, delicious sound. Once, squish. 2, quiet laughter. Not even laughter, but giggles. Is it worth writing that my courage and inflated courage disappeared in a second? I swear it wasn't a person. Over the course of my life, I have watched a lot of films, talked to a wide variety of people, and listened to a wide variety of experimental music. I swear, human lips can't do that. Something giggled disgustingly behind the iron door. It hit the door again, and it started to put pressure on her, rub what was smacking into the door, and giggle. Guesses came into my head. What should the lips and mouth be like for the sound to be like that? I realized that IT wasn't IT who was smacking, it was something that it was throwing at the door. Now it was rubbing it into the door and making a noise. Giggled. It paused to slurp and hiss, over and over again, and I listened. I was not numb. I did not want to move, and for IT to add another sound to its symphony. I listened. What else could I have done? Then, maybe 30 minutes later, I don't know, it started singing. Or rather, it hummed. You know when people hum a tune. Stupid, right? I didn't know the melody, but it apparently enjoyed her. There were no squishes or smacks, but the giggles remained. It was an arrangement. It's like there are 2 of them, but it is one. I would hear the sounds of walking or an elevator. It must be one. Another guess came into my head. What if he has 2 mouths? Tears began to flow. I stood on half-bent tired legs and cried quietly. An idea came to mind. Scream, wake up the neighbors, everyone, so that there are people, so that it goes away. Because I was crying, I exhaled loudly. The mooing stopped. It became quiet. I was waiting, squelching, laughing. It doesn't matter. Silence. I waited 15 minutes. Exactly. I counted in my head to 900. Slowly, with pauses. I sat down on the floor, right next to my door, the keys hanging in the lock. Silence covered my head like a bomb. I could breathe. I could relax my legs. I could cry thinly with joy and fear at the same time. It is gone. Even if I didn't hear his steps or the elevator, it was silent, which means it's gone. After another 10 minutes, I began to justify the situation, considering it someone's evil and very cunning trick. A first-class draw. A joke on a late guy. My head went quiet. A thin melody came to mind. It's like a child singing in silence. A gentle angelic voice, like a beacon in the darkness. I immediately imagined a boy in a dark forest, wandering along a path and singing an old song in a thin voice. And from the thicket, terrible creatures look at him. And the song is the boy's only hope. Strange, what kind of song is this? I sat on the tiled floor of the corridor and listened. I wiped the tears from my face and ruffled my hair. I hit my right ear. The angelic singing twitched. I heard it out of my head. It was singing behind the door. I frozen. And it, confirming my guess, giggled. The little boy singed. Something mooned. It giggled. Smack, squish, hiss, mooing, laughter, boy. I passed out. In the morning, I was woken up by a father from a young family, escorting his daughter to kindergarten. He thought I had passed out while returning from smoking. The neighbors are aware of my habit. I didn't dissuade him. I silently entered my room and turned off the TV. I prepared breakfast and washed myself. I wrote to my aunt and uncle's family that I would come to visit 3 to 4 days before my parents arrived. They were surprised but agreed. I got dressed, packed my things, and went to the site. There were no sounds. The elevator area was clean. Nothing to remind me of last night. Going out into the street, I was pleasantly happy about the summer day. Teenagers, mothers with children, old people. I even smiled. The concierge was sitting on a bench next to the entrance. I said hello. She smiled. We started talking. I know her well. Oh, you're leaving too? The whole entrance has been on pins and needles these last few days. Everyone left somewhere. Soon I'll be alone. With this, God forbid, she said, and crossed herself. What is this with? I was surprised. Well, you know, he wanders around at night. He gives me nightmares. Smack, boom, squish. Then he will sing. It hums. No peace. He wants to take everything to the grave. I vomited into the trash can nearby.